On June 15, 1971, Senator Mike Gravel received a copy of the Pentagon Papers from an editor at the Washington Post. Over the next week, Senator Gravel reviewed the documents with his congressional staff, and at the end of that week, entered the Pentagon Papers over 4,000 pages into the official congressional record. Subsequently, a federal grand jury was convened to discuss the legality of Senator Gravel's actions due to the confidentiality of the documents. The case ended up going to the Supreme Court in the case Gravel v. United States, and in a landmark 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that Senator Gravel's actions, while they would have normally been considered criminal, were protected by Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 says, "Senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services, to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall in all cases except for treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest when attending a session of their respective houses and in going to or coming from the same. And for speech and debate occurring in either house, they shall be privileged from questioning in any other place." Now, there are two main parts of this article that are important to discuss before we get into the importance of the article for you and for me today. The first is the very first sentence. You see, Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 states, "Senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services." The problem that the writers of our Constitution found was in the very next sentence, "to be ascertained by law." You see, senators and representatives are a part of the legislative branch, which, as many of us know, is the branch responsible for making law. So in essence, what this article of the Constitution did is gave senators and representatives the power to ascertain their own compensation, including giving themselves raises. So all the way back in 1789, an amendment was proposed to fix this problem. In essence, what this amendment would do is make sure that any changes to the compensation of a senator or representative would not take effect until the next legislative session. Although this amendment was proposed in 1789, it was not ratified until 1989, decades and centuries, in fact, later. In fact, Nebraska became the most recent state to ratify what is now known as the 27th Amendment on April 1st of 2016, just about 16 days ago. So that's the first part of the article, is the compensation clause of Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. But perhaps the most interesting part is the second, the privileges that senators and representatives receive. You see, it's this part of the article that allowed Senator Gravel to not be convicted of a federal offense. Why? Because as long as a senator's actions are being carried out while in their official capacity, they shall not be prosecuted except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace. And this is what allowed Senator Gravel to not be convicted. So what's the problem with this section? Well, many of us may think, doesn't this just excuse criminal activity? Doesn't this just mean that people like Senator Gravel can commit crime and get away with it? But it absolutely doesn't. Before we make snap decisions about the usefulness of articles, we need to analyze the reason why they're there. You see, the reason why Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 exists is because of the concept of checks and balances. You see, our American constitutional writers had just gotten out of, if you will, a bad relationship with centralized government, a bad relationship with a government that had too much power in one man. And the very last thing that our founders wanted is to create a monarchy in America. So the very last thing they wanted was for the executive branch, the president, to have the power to remove senators, to remove representatives on pretexts and on bases simply because he didn't want them to vote a certain way, or because the president didn't believe that a senator or representative would vote in the way that he personally would like them to. So because of the concept of checks and balances, senators and representatives are given immunity in these cases because we do not want centralized government that has too much power in one branch. So we may be thinking, why does this matter to me? We're not senators and representatives. We certainly don't receive the compensation of senators and representatives. Why does it matter to us as American citizens? Well, while it's true that we're not senators or representatives, we may never be the direct beneficiaries of this part of the Constitution. It is something that we should be very grateful for indeed. Why? Because as Americans, we do not want a monarchy. We do not want a society that has too much power in one man. The centralized government, the federalist government that we as Americans enjoy is a privilege because of sections of the Constitution like Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. And that is something that we should be very grateful for indeed.